Well, that was a shock. For those who don't know, Leonard Nemoy has just been confirmed, just passed away. For those who don't know who that is, he was the actor who immortalized the character of not Dr. Spock. He's known as Dr. Spock to a lot of people who don't know who he is, but he's actually Mr. Spock, the first officer, on a little show called Star Trek. Now, it might be surprising to you, maybe, just looking at this YouTube channel, seeing what a nerd I am. I'm not very much of a Star Trek fan. I do like Star Trek. I am a Star Trek fan to a certain extent, but I have a lot of cynicism about it that most Star Trek fans don't. At least from what I understand. I think William Shatner is a really silly actor and kind of a scummy human being, from what I've heard. I think that Gene Roddenberry was not nearly the humanitarian everyone makes him out to be, as he repeatedly stole from people, and his writing got worse and worse into his later years of life in a way that gives George Lucas a run for his money. I think that the original series itself is overuses Deus Ex Machinas and has a lot of very serious writing flaws to it. And overall, while everyone keeps talking about how the franchise did wonders for people of mixed races and race relations in the future, it consistently puts women's rights years and years backwards. And so like I said, I have a complicated relationship with the show because I like it, but I have all these things about it where people are like, it's the best thing ever, and I don't agree with that. But all of that cynicism that I have, all of that cynicism about it melts when it comes to certain people who are involved in certain aspects of the show. People like George Takei, Nichelle Nichols, people who actually changed, who were, who have been very important, I guess, afterwards. And probably the biggest thing about Star Trek, the original series, anyway, I'm a bigger fan of Next Generation than the original series, but that's not here. But one of the biggest things where my cynicism melts is Leonard Nimoy and Spock. Leonard Nimoy, I believe, I know next to nothing about him as a person, but from seeing him in interviews and his other roles, I know him to be a fantastic actor, and I think that he is probably, or was, an incredibly cool guy. He just seemed like he's sort of like a very shy, goof guy, but a goofball, and just a very, very interesting actor and a very, very interesting guy. His photography, his beliefs in his photography, his acting was always very interesting. I liked that he had that project, that stuff that he really focused on in his older age. And he still did very little acting, but he still did some acting when he did. He was one of the best parts of the 2009 Star Trek movie, in my opinion. And Spock, the character, I wish I could talk about Leonard Nimoy's other work, but I'm really not as familiar with it as I'd like to be. Maybe I can fix that now, but Leonard Nimoy's role as Spock meant a lot to me, and I think it touched a lot of people in a way, because I know for me at least, there's this aspect about, especially when you're going through life, but especially when you're going through your teenage years. I think this is why Spock connects with a lot of teenagers, where your hormones and everything are literally driving you insane. This is scientifically accurate. You're literally insane when you're a teenager, up through most of your 20s, so apparently I'm still going through this. And you have all these wild and crazy emotions and impulses going through your head, and you just wish that you could silence it and just try and figure something out with reason, and to just step away from the problem and look at it logically. And look at it... I apologize for the shaky cam with this phone thing. This is what I have available. And for the bad lighting, but it's just to look at that as an equation and just figure it out on those merits. This is one of my favorite lines that Spock ever said was in the next to last episode, All Our Yesterdays, and he says, where someone says to Spock, "You talk of it like it's an equation." He said, "It should be. It should be an equation." And I'm like, I relate to that. I relate to that because Spock struggles, because Spock is half human. That's something that's very important to remember. Spock struggles with his human half, trying to keep the emotions down and focus on strict logic throughout the series, was a struggle that I think a lot of people identified with in a weird way. I mean, it's funny that, to me, the most identifiable character in the show was the alien, because he was so shy. Really, Spock was actually... I mean, he never had a problem letting his opinions be heard, but he was so shy and so insecure about his own abilities and his abilities to stick to his father's code. It was fascinating to watch. Fascinating. And it meant a lot to me, and it has helped me... Honestly, it has helped me through some interesting times. Interesting is a good word for it. And also... But more importantly, as the character grew older, and as Leonard Nimoy grew older, he played it differently. He played Spock growing up, and in Star Trek II and Star Trek VI, and especially in Star Trek VI, and definitely in the 2009 movie, you got to see Spock mellow out a lot, and he started to come to a conclusion that you could see it, even if it wasn't said in the dialogue, that his struggle with logic and emotion had subsided. It wasn't a struggle anymore. He knew when one was appropriate and one was not. He was no longer trying to bury his emotions. He knew how to be logical, he knew how to be emotional, and he didn't have to have them fight so very often. He still had issues. In the TNG episode, Unification, you can see he's still struggling with issues related to his father and stuff like that, but you could see that it's gotten a little bit more figured out. He's got it all together now, mostly. And, again, that was also very comforting. But more than anything, I think we've seen over the years, with all of the other Star Trek shows, and all of the other actors who have played Vulcans, that, aside from possibly Mark Lenard, there has never been an actor to play a Vulcan better than Leonard Nimoy did. Which is funny, because again, he played a half-human Vulcan. But he played a character who was always stoic, but never without personality. Always emotionless, yet never uninteresting. Or not always emotionless, obviously, as I just said, but like, he was always keeping the emotions down, very logical, very stoic, very... almost... You would think this character would be one note, and when a lot of other actors have played Vulcans, they have been one note. They have been very boring characters, or very annoying characters, as the case may be. But Spock was never those things. Spock was always bump, bump, bump. He was hit every mark. He was always the most fascinating character in the room, and that speaks, I think, volumes about the talent and charisma of Leonard Nimoy. And you could also see in any of the many episodes in Season 3 where the crew gets possessed by other alien consciousnesses, Leonard Nimoy's acting chops when he played that other character who was possessing him was always the most interesting to watch. Just the way his entire body and his mannerisms would shift. So I am very sad today, in a way that maybe I don't have a right to be, because I didn't know the man. I didn't, but I am still. This guy meant to me. His work meant something to me, and I think a lot of people out there feel the same way. So, it's not a happy time for me right now. But this issue shouldn't be about me, obviously. This is about him. He lived a really good life. He accomplished incredible work. He did only what he wanted to do. I like that about it. Someone posted something on Facebook today. It was Leonard Nemoy, the man who boldly went wherever he wanted. And I think that's another thing that I really admire about him, is that he didn't just act. He didn't just he acted. He directed. Him and Bill Shatner are probably one of the only two actors in the original cast who actually were able to tell the studio, "I want this done," and they did it, as opposed to George Takei, who had to spend 6 movies desperately asking for a bigger part until they finally made him a captain in Star Trek VI and then shoved his character into the background. But Leonard Nimoy said, "I want to die," and I said, "Okay. I want to come back." "Okay, yes, but only if I direct." "Yes, we will." And then he just quit acting one day when he didn't want to anymore, and he just started doing his photography, and it's really good photography, by the way. So he was just an awesome guy. I sincerely hope now that he's in a better place. I don't really know much about his religious background, except that he grew up a Jew, Orthodox Jew, I believe, but I don't actually know. So I hope that he's in a better place now, and I guess we're just going to have to get on without him in this world, which is... He's just one of those people that I never thought he wouldn't be here, I guess. I don't know. They just keep going. Well, rest in peace, Leonard Nemoy. If you'll all excuse me, I'm going to go watch Amok Time probably 50 times in a row. Speaking of which, if any of you out there are more familiar with the 2009 Spock and don't know much about the original Spock other than his appearances in those movies, I recommend go on Netflix. All of the Star Trek shows that Leonard Nimoy was in are there. Don't remember if Star Trek 2 is on there, but if it is, watch it. If Star Trek 6 is on there, watch it as well. As for really good Spock episodes in Star Trek, the original series, Amok Time, All Our Yesterdays. What's another one? I'm blanking. I'm sorry. Star Trek The Next Generation, Unification is a really great episode as well. Galileo 7. Excellent. All excellent stuff. See you guys later. This is Harvey Media, signing off.